The vibration of the phone against the mahogany console of the Bentley was subtle. The vibration of the phone against the mahogany console of the Bentley was subtle. Almost apologetic, but to Richard Sterling it felt like an earthquake. It was 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. Outside, the world was a blur of freezing rain and sodium streetlights as the car sped north on I-95, leaving the steel canyons of Manhattan behind. Richard was exhausted. His eyes, usually a piercing cerulean blue, were rimmed with red, the result of a 14-hour flight from Tokyo, and 3 days of boardroom warfare that had saved Sterling Global from a hostile takeover. He was wearing his signature cream-colored cashmere suit, now slightly rumpled, a testament to the battles fought in skyscrapers. He reached for the phone. The screen illuminated the dark cabin with a harsh, artificial glow. Alert. Motion detected kitchen camera. 3:12 a.m. Richard frowned. The house in Greenwich should have been asleep hours ago. His wife, Marcella, had texted him at 9 p.m. saying she was exhausted from managing the girls and was turning in early. His twin daughters, Lily and Rose, 7 years old and blind since birth, never left their beds after lights out. They couldn't navigate the sprawling mansion in the dark without guidance. He tapped the notification. The app buffered for a split second, a spinning circle of doom, before resolving into a grainy, high-definition night vision feed. The kitchen of the Sterling estate was vast. A cathedral of marble and stainless steel that Richard had designed himself. But on the screen, it looked like a dungeon. Two small figures were huddled in the corner by the oversized Sub-Zero refrigerator. Lily and Rose. They were wearing matching Saks blue pajamas, their small knees drawn up to their chests. They were holding hands, a lifeline of tactile comfort in a world of darkness. Even in the monochrome feed, Richard could see they were trembling. Then, a shadow moved across the frame. Marcella stepped into the light of the refrigerator's open door. She wasn't wearing the silk lingerie she usually wore when Richard was home. She was wearing heavy winter boots and a thick wool coat over her nightgown, snow melting off her shoulders onto the pristine floor. Her blonde hair was wild, tangled, framing a face that was twisted into a snarl Richard didn't recognize. In her hand, she held a greasy paper bag. Fast food. Please, Mother. Lily's voice came through the phone speaker, tinny but unmistakable. We're thirsty. Thirsty? Marcella hissed. The sound was like a whip crack in the silent car. She grabbed a half-empty bottle of water from the counter and poured it onto the floor, right in front of the girl's bare feet. There, drink from the floor. That's where animals belong. Richard's breath hitched in his throat. His hand tightened around the phone so hard. The case creaked. Rose began to cry, a silent, shoulder-shaking sob. She reached out, her small hand patting the wet floor, trying to understand what was happening. Stop crying, Marcella shouted, kicking Rose's white cane which was leaning against the wall. It skittered across the floor with a clatter. If you wake the staff, I will put you in the basement. Do you want to go to the basement? With the spiders? No. Both girls screamed in a terrified whisper, huddling closer together. Then eat this and shut up. Marcella reached into the bag and pulled out a cold, half-eaten burger. She threw it at them. It hit Lily in the chest. Your father isn't here to save you. He's in Tokyo. He's forgotten you. Just like your mother did when she died. The feed cut to black as the signal faltered. Richard stared at the blank screen. The silence in the car was deafening. He felt a coldness spread through his chest, colder than the freezing rain outside, colder than the grave he had visited 3 years ago. It was the coldness of absolute, undeniable clarity. Turn the car around, Richard whispered. The driver, a former Marine named Miller, looked in the rearview mirror. Sir, we are 20 minutes from the estate. I said turn around. Richard roared, slamming his fist into the leather seat. No, wait, don't turn around. Drive faster. Drive like hell. Run every red light. If a cop stops us, don't stop. Miller saw the look in Richard's eyes. It wasn't the look of a CEO, It was the look of a man who was about to commit murder, yes, sir. The engine roared. The car surged forward. Richard looked out the window, watching the rain turn to snow. And for the first time in his life, he prayed. He prayed he wasn't too late to understand the monster in that kitchen. You have to understand the ghost that haunted the hallways. And to understand the ghost, you have to go back to the beginning. Before the cameras. Before the silence. To the day the music died. 3 years earlier. The cemetery in Greenwich was covered in a blanket of fresh snow, pristine and unforgiving. It was the kind of cold that seeped through the soles of your shoes and settled in your bones. Richard stood by the open grave. He was wearing a black wool coat, the collar turned up. He held the hands of his 4-year-old daughters, Lily and Rose. They were tiny, bundled in matching pink snowsuits, their eyes hidden behind dark glasses. They stood perfectly still, their heads tilted, listening to the wind howl through the bare oak trees. Grace, his wife, the love of his life, the woman who played Chopin on the Steinway every Sunday morning, gone. A patch of black ice on Route 7, a skid. A tree. Silence. Daddy? Lily tugged at his gloved hand. Why is everyone crying? Because Mommy is going on a long trip, baby. Richard choked out. The lie tasted like ash. Can we go? Rose asked. It's dark here. I don't like the dark. It's always dark for them, Aunt Elena whispered. She stood behind them, her hand on Richard's shoulder. Elena was Grace's sister, a woman of fierce emotions and deep loyalty. She was crying openly, her tears freezing on her cheeks. Bernard, the family butler who had served the Sterlings for 2 decades, stood a few feet away holding a black umbrella. He was a man of stone, but today, the stone was cracking. He looked at the twins with a heartbreaking tenderness. The priest finished his prayers. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes. Richard couldn't watch the coffin being lowered. He felt a scream building in his chest, a scream that would shatter the polite silence of the mourners. But he swallowed it. He had to be strong. He was the father. He was the protector. Let's go, Richard said abruptly. He turned and walked away, pulling the girls along. He walked fast, almost dragging them through the snow. Richard, wait! Elena called out. Come to my house. Don't go back to that empty mansion alone. Richard didn't stop. They need their beds. They need routine. They need love. Elena shouted after him. Don't shut us out, Richard. But Richard was already shutting down. He put the girls in the limousine and closed the door. As the car drove away, leaving Grace behind in the frozen ground, Richard made a silent vow. I will build a fortress around them. Nothing will ever hurt them again. He didn't know then that the fortress he would build would become their prison. Grief is a tricky architect. It builds walls to keep pain out, but it also keeps the light out. Richard thought he was saving his family by isolating them. He was wrong. If you've ever lost someone, you know that silence is the loudest sound in the world. The months that followed were a blur of gray. The Sterling estate, once filled with music and laughter, became a mausoleum. Richard ordered the curtains drawn in every room. The sun fades the furniture, he told the staff. But the truth was, he couldn't stand the light. He threw himself into his work. Sterling Global became his obsession. He left the house at 5:30 a.m. and returned after the twins were asleep. He told himself he was building a legacy for them. He was securing their future. But at home, the girls were growing up in a vacuum. Bernard was their only constant. He became their eyes. Bernard, what does the sky look like today? Lily would ask, sitting at the kitchen island, swinging her legs. Today, Miss Lily, Bernard would say, polishing the silver. The sky is the color of a robin's egg. And the clouds are like whipped cream. Can I eat them? Rose would giggle. Not the clouds, Miss Rose, but I have made cookies that taste just like them. Bernard taught them to navigate the house. He placed textured mats at the thresholds of rooms, rough for the kitchen, soft for the living room. He taught them to count steps. 12 steps to the stairs. 18 steps to the bedroom. Richard, On the rare occasions he was home, felt like a stranger. One evening he came home early. He found the girls in the music room. They were sitting under the grand piano, whispering to each other. "Daddy's home," Lily whispered. "I hear his shoes. Click-clack, the angry shoes." Rose said. "Maybe he won't see us." Richard stood in the doorway, his heart breaking. Angry shoes. Is that what he was to them? The sound of anger? He wanted to go to them. He wanted to crawl under the piano and hold them. But the grief was a physical weight, pressing him down. Every time he looked at them, he saw Grace. He saw the tragedy, so he turned around and went to his study. He poured a scotch and buried himself in spreadsheets. It was easier to manage millions of dollars than to manage two broken hearts. Children are observant. They hear what we don't say. They feel the energy we bring into a room. Richard's avoidance was creating a wound that would take years to heal. Do you think he was a bad father or just a broken one? It was at a charity gala in Manhattan, 18 months later, that he met her. Marcella. She was standing near the ice sculpture, wearing a dress of crimson silk that clung to her like a second skin. She wasn't just beautiful. She was radiant. She had blonde waves that cascaded down her back, and a smile that seemed to promise that everything would be okay. She had targeted him. Richard didn't know that, of course. He didn't know she had researched his net worth, his tragic history, his blind daughters. He just saw a woman who looked at him with admiration instead of pity. "You look like a man who carries the weight of the world," she said, handing him a glass of champagne. Her voice was like honey. "Just a few continents," Richard joked weakly. "I can help you carry it," she said. They started dating. Marcella was perfect. She was interested in his business. She was patient with his schedule. And when he finally introduced her to the girls, she was an Oscar-worthy actress. "Oh, you poor little angels," she cooed, kneeling down to hug them. She smelled of expensive perfume Chanel No. 5, scent that was sharp and chemical to the sensitive noses of the twins. Lily pulled back slightly. "You smell like the cleaning spray," she whispered. Marcella laughed, a tinkling sound that didn't reach her eyes. "That's just soap, darling." "I'm very clean." Elena saw through her immediately. "She's a shark, Richard," Elena warned him one Sunday while dropping off homemade lasagna. "Look at her eyes. They don't smile when her mouth does." "You're just jealous," Richard snapped. "You want me to be miserable forever." "Marcella makes me happy. She wants to be a mother to them. She wants to be a millionaire," Elena shot back. Richard kicked Elena out that day. He banned her from the house for a month. He was so desperate for a normal life, for a partner, that he blinded himself to the truth. 6 months later, they were married in a private ceremony in the garden. The twins were flower girls, tripping over their long dresses, looking lost. Marcella stood at the altar in white, triumphant. Desperation makes us blind. Richard wanted a mother for his girls so badly that he let a wolf into the sheep pen. Have you ever had a bad feeling about someone that turned out to be true? Trust your gut. The change happened slowly, then all at once. First, it was the redecorating. "This house is too dark," Marcella announced one morning. "It feels like a crypt. We need modern. We need minimalist." She hired a team of contractors. The soft plush carpets that the girls used to navigate were ripped up, replaced by cold, slippery marble. The textured wallpapers were stripped, replaced by smooth, featureless paint. "I can't find my room," Rose cried one afternoon standing in the hallway. "The walls feel the same. Everything is slippery." "You'll learn," Marcella said, stepping over her. "Adaptability is a life skill." Then it was the food. "They are getting chubby," Marcella told Richard. "Too many carbs. Bernard is feeding them cookies all day. We need a strict diet, organic, low calorie." The cookies disappeared. The comfort food disappeared, replaced by kale smoothies and raw vegetables. "I'm hungry," Lily whispered at night. "Drink water," Rose replied. "It stops the tummy rumble." And finally, the staff. Bernard was the first target. "He's stealing from us, Richard," Marcella claimed one evening, holding up a bottle of wine. "I found this in his bag. A 1982 Bordeaux." "Bernard wouldn't steal." Richard frowned. "He's been with us for 20 years. He's getting old. Maybe senile. Or maybe he thinks he's owed something." "Richard, I don't feel safe with him in the house." Richard confronted Bernard. "I did not take the wine, sir," Bernard said, standing tall in his uniform. "Mrs. Sterling asked me to move it to the cellar. I believe she placed it in my bag. Are you calling my wife a liar?" Richard asked, his voice rising. Bernard looked at Richard. He saw the exhaustion, the manipulation. He knew he couldn't win. "I will resign, sir," Bernard said softly. "But please, watch over the girls. They are unhappy." "Get out," Richard said. When Bernard left, the last line of defense was gone. The fortress Richard had built was now commanded by the enemy. Isolating the victim is step 1 in the abuser's handbook. Marcella systematically removed everyone who could protect the girls. It's a terrifyingly common tactic. Richard is now completely dependent on her for information about his own home. 2 years into the marriage. The atmosphere in the house was toxic. The girls were thin, pale shadows. They rarely spoke. They spent their days in their room, listening to audiobooks, holding hands. Richard was traveling more than ever. He felt the tension at home, but Marcella always had an excuse. "They're just going through a phase. It's the disability, Richard. They get frustrated." But then came the Tokyo deal. It was the biggest merger in Sterling global history. Richard would be gone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Marcella's eyes lit up when he told her. "That's a long time. I'll miss you." "I have to go," Richard said. "But I'm worried about them. They seem so quiet lately." "I'll take good care of them." Marcella kissed him. "Go, make us billions." Richard packed his bags. But the night before his flight, he couldn't sleep. He went to the kitchen for water. He heard a noise. Marcella was in the living room on the phone. She thought everyone was asleep. "Yeah, 3 weeks," she was saying, laughing softly. "The idiot has no idea." "The accounts?" "I'm working on it. I need his digital key. Once I have that, I can transfer the trust fund." "And the girls?" "Boarding school. Or a state home. I don't care. I just want them gone." Richard froze in the hallway. His heart stopped. He didn't confront her. Not yet. He was a businessman. He knew that if he confronted her now, she would deny it. She would gaslight him. She would destroy the evidence. He needed proof. Irrefutable proof. The next morning, while Marcella was at the spa, Richard called a private security team. "I want cameras," he told the lead technician. "Everywhere. Kitchen, living room, hallways. Hidden. High definition. Audio enabled. And I want the feed to go only to my phone." "We can do it in 2 hours, Mr. Sterling." They worked fast. Tiny lenses hidden in smoke detectors, in light fixtures, in the eyes of decorative statues. When Richard left for the airport that afternoon, he hugged the girls. "I love you," he whispered. "I'll be watching over you. I promise." "Don't go, Daddy," Rose begged, clinging to his leg. "She hates us when you're gone." "I have to, baby. But I'm leaving a magic spell on the house. A spell that lets me see." He got in the car. He flew to Tokyo. For the first 2 days, nothing happened. Marcella ignored the girls, leaving them in their room while she shopped online or drank wine in the living room. But on the 3rd night, the notification came, and Richard saw the monster unmasked, and now we are back in the car. The loop is closed. Richard knows everything. He is racing back. But what will he find when he gets there? Will he be in time? The storm is getting worse, and the house is locked tight. The Bentley flew down the Merritt Parkway like a silver bullet fired into the heart of the storm. The speedometer hovered near 110 miles per hour. The windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle against the sleet that pelted the glass like handfuls of gravel inside. The silence was suffocating. Richard Sterling sat in the back, his body rigid. He hadn't blinked in minutes. His eyes were glued to the phone screen, witnessing a nightmare unfold in real time. On the screen, the scene in the kitchen had escalated. Marcella was pacing now. Her heavy boots clomped on the marble floor, a sound that vibrated through the phone's speaker. To Lily and Rose, huddled in the corner, that sound must have been like thunder. "Eat it," Marcella commanded, pointing a manicured finger at the cold burger on the floor. "Every bite. Waste is a sign." Lily reached out with a trembling hand. She patted the cold floor until her fingers touched the greasy wrapper. She picked up the burger. It was soggy with melted snow from Marcella's boots. "Please, Mother," Lily whimpered. "It's wet." "It's flavor." Marcella laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Do you think the world cares if your food is dry? You are spoiled, useless. Your father wastes thousands on your special tutors. And for what? You can't even see the mess you make." Richard watched as Lily took a small, hesitant bite. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the grease on her chin. Rose buried her face in her sister's shoulder, refusing to look, refusing to exist. Richard felt a physical pain in his chest, sharp and hot. It was the feeling of his heart breaking, fracturing under the weight of his own guilt. "I did this," he thought. "I brought her here. I married her. I ignored Alina. I ignored Bernard. I built this prison and handed her the key." He looked up at Miller, his driver. "How long?" Richard croaked. His voice sounded like it belonged to a stranger horse ruined. 12 minutes, sir," Miller replied, his eyes locked on the road. "I'm pushing it. The roads are icing over." "Push harder," Richard said. "If we crash, we crash. Just get me there." He looked back at the screen. Marcella had stopped pacing. She was standing over Rose now. "And you," Marcella whispered. "The quiet one. Do you have nothing to say?" Rose shook her head frantically. "Speak!" Marcella screamed, grabbing Rose by the hair. Richard screamed in the car. "No!" He punched the leather seat in front of him. "Don't touch her." But the phone didn't transmit his voice. He was a ghost, watching a haunting he couldn't stop. The helplessness of a parent is a terrible thing to witness. Richard has all the money in the world, but in this moment, he is powerless. He is just a man in a car, racing against time. If you are on the edge of your seat, praying for those 12 minutes to fly by, hit that like button inside the Sterling kitchen. The world was a terrifying cacophony of sounds and smells for the twins. To a blind child, the world is built of vibrations. And tonight, the vibrations were violent. Lily could smell the stale alcohol on Marcella's breath from 3 feet away. It smelled like the antiseptic she used to clean their scraped knees, but sharper, meaner. She could smell the wet wool of Marcella's coat, a damp, dog-like smell. But the worst was the sound, the thud of the boots. The swish of the coat. The crack of Rose's hair being pulled. "I'm sorry," Rose cried out, her voice high and thin. "I'll speak. I'll speak." Marcella let go of her hair. Rose slumped against the cabinet, sobbing. "Good," Marcella said, smoothing her coat. "Now tell me, who is the burden in this house?" Rose hesitated. Her lip trembled. "Say it," Marcella hissed. "We are," Rose whispered. "We are the burden." Louder. "We are the burden." Rose screamed, the words tearing at her throat. Marcella smiled. Richard saw it on the screen, a cold, satisfied smirk. "Correct," Marcella said. "And burdens don't get dessert. Burdens get the basement." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a key. A heavy iron key that the girls had learned to fear. "Get up," Marcella ordered. "March. To the cellar door. Count your steps. Or do you need me to drag you?" Lily grabbed Rose's hand. They stood up, their legs shaking so bad they knocked together. 1 step. 2 steps. They navigated by memory, by the feel of the tile grout under their bare feet. They moved toward the heavy oak door at the back of the kitchen, the door that led down to the cold, unfinished basement where the furnace lived. "Please, Mother," Lily begged, stalling. "It's too cold down there. We don't have our slippers." "Cold preserves things," Marcella said cryptically. "Maybe it will preserve your silence." She unlocked the door. Click. The sound echoed like a gunshot. A draft of freezing air rushed up from the darkness, smelling of mold and damp earth. "Down," Marcella pointed. The girls stood at the top of the stairs. It was a pitch-black void. To them, everywhere was dark, but the basement had a different kind of darkness, a heavy, suffocating weight. "I said down." Marcella shoved Lily. Lily stumbled. Her foot slipped on the first step. She flailed, grabbing the railing just in time to stop herself from tumbling down the wooden stairs. Richard, watching in the car, felt his heart stop. "We are here," Miller shouted from the front seat. "The gate." The basement. The ultimate fear for any child, magnified 1,000 times for a child who cannot see. Marcella isn't just punishing them. She is terrorizing them. Richard is at the gate. The countdown is over. The war begins now. The iron gates of the Sterling estate were closed, locked tight against the storm. Miller didn't slow down. "Hold on. Hold on." "Sir," Miller said calmly. He didn't ram the gate. That would disable the car. Instead, he swerved onto the grass shoulder, smashing through the decorative hedges and the white picket fence that lined the perimeter. The Bentley bucked and roared, its suspension groaning as it tore through the frozen mud. Debris flew everywhere. Branches whipped against the windows. They careened across the front lawn, tires spinning on the snow, cutting deep scars into the manicured landscape Richard had paid thousands to maintain. They skidded to a halt at the foot of the grand staircase. The car was still moving when Richard opened the door. He didn't feel the cold. He didn't feel the snow soaking his Italian loafers. He didn't feel the wind tearing at his suit jacket. He ran. He ran up the stone steps, slipping once, scraping his hand raw on the concrete, but scrambling up instantly. He reached the massive oak front doors. Locked. He didn't have his keys. He had left them in his coat pocket in the car. He didn't hesitate. He backed up 2 steps and threw his shoulder into the wood. Thud. Nothing. The door was solid oak, reinforced. "Miller!" Richard screamed. Miller was already there, holding a tire iron from the trunk. "Stand back, sir." Miller swung. Crash. The glass panel next to the doorknob shattered. Miller reached in, unlocked the deadbolt, and threw the door open. Richard burst into the foyer. The house was silent. The jazz music had stopped. "Marcella!" Richard roared. The sound was primal, a mixture of a father's love and a killer's rage. "Get away from them!" He ran toward the kitchen, his footsteps thundering on the marble floor he had once told the girls not to run on. The visuals here are intense. The Bentley smashing through the hedges, the tire iron shattering the glass. Richard is done being the polite CEO. He is a force of nature. If you are cheering for him right now, drop a in the comments. Marcella froze. She was standing at the top of the basement stairs, one hand still on Lily's shoulder. She turned her head. Her eyes widened in genuine shock. She looked at Richard disheveled, bleeding from his hand, snow in his hair, panting like a wild animal. "Richard?" she whispered. The arrogance vanished, replaced by the instinctual fear of a prey animal caught by a predator. You're supposed to be... Get away from them," Richard said. His voice was dangerously low. He walked toward her, slow and steady. "Take your hands off my daughter." Marcella looked at her hand on Lily's shoulder. She snatched it back as if she had been burned. "Richard, wait. It's not what it looks like." She stepped back, putting her hands up. They were playing near the stairs. I was trying to stop them. I saved them." "Save them?" Richard stopped 10 feet away. He pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen was cracked from the drive, but the video was still paused on the frame of her shoving Lily. I watched you, Richard said. I watched you feed them off the floor. I watched you kick Rose. I watched you unlock the door. Marcella's face went white. She looked at the phone, then at Richard. The realization hit her. The cameras. You spied on me? She tried to muster some indignation, but it fell flat. I saw a monster, Richard said. He looked at the girls. They were huddled against the wall, trembling. They recognized his voice, but they were confused. Was it real? Or was it another trick? Daddy? Lily whispered. Is that the real Daddy? Richard's heart shattered again. He dropped to his knees. He didn't care about Marcella anymore. He crawled the last few feet to his daughters. It's me, baby. It's the real Daddy. He reached out. Lily flinched. She pulled back, protecting her head. That flinch. It was the most painful thing Richard had ever experienced. More painful than Grace's death. Because this was fear of him. Or of what he represented adults. I won't hurt you, Richard choked out, tears finally spilling over. I will never, ever let anyone hurt you again. He touched Lily's hand. She felt his ring, the signet ring he always wore. She traced it. The ring, she whispered to Rose. It's him. They threw themselves into his arms. Richard gathered them up, burying his face in their hair, smelling the grease from the burger and the fear on their skin. I've got you, he sobbed. I've got you. Marcella watched them. Her shock was turning into panic. She saw Miller standing in the doorway with the tire iron. She saw the look on Richard's face. She started to back away toward the back door. You can't prove anything, she stammered. It's my word against yours. I'm the mother. The courts will side with me. The courts? Richard looked up from his daughters. His eyes were dry now. You think you're going to court? I want a lawyer. Marcella screamed. You're going to need a priest, Richard said. The flinch. That tiny movement tells the whole story of the abuse. It breaks the viewer's heart. But seeing them recognize him by the ring is a beautiful detail. Richard has them. They are safe. Now it's time for the reckoning. Are you ready to see Marcella fall? The sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder every second. Richard had called them from the car. Marcella bolted. She turned and ran for the back door, slipping on the wet floor where she had spilled the water earlier. Karma. She scrambled up, clawing at the door handle. Miller moved. He didn't run. He just stepped into her path. He was a large man, a wall of muscle in a chauffeur's uniform. Going somewhere, Mrs. Sterling? Miller asked politely. Get out of my way. Marcella screamed, scratching at his face. Miller didn't flinch. He just caught her wrists and held them. Let me go. Richard, tell him to let me go. Richard stood up, lifting both girls into his arms. They were heavy, but he felt like he could carry the world. Hold her, Miller, Richard said. Wait for the police. You can't do this. Marcella shrieked. I know things, Richard. I know about your offshore accounts. I'll ruin you. I don't have offshore accounts, Richard said calmly. But you do. Marcella froze. I know about Gerardo Cisneros. Richard dropped the bomb. The name sucked the air out of the room. Marcella stopped struggling. She went limp in Miller's grip. Gerardo, she whispered. My forensic team found the emails, Richard said, walking closer, shielding the girl's ears with his hands. I know you were sending him my proprietary data. I know about the plan to declare me mentally incompetent. I know about the trust fund theft. He made me do it. Marcella cried, the tears flowing freely now. He threatened me. I was a victim. You were a partner, Richard said. And now you are a prisoner. The police burst in. 4 officers, guns drawn, snow on their shoulders. Police! Drop it! Miller released Marcella and stepped back, hands raised. She's all yours, officers. They swarmed her. Handcuffs clicked. The sound of metal on metal was the sweetest music Richard had heard in years. Richard! Marcella screamed as they dragged her out. Don't let them take me. I'm your wife. I love you. You love my money, Richard said to her, retreating back. And you hated my children. Goodbye, Marcella. The door closed. The screaming stopped. Silence returned to the Sterling estate. But this time, it wasn't a heavy silence. It was a clean silence. Richard looked down at the girls. They were clinging to his neck, trembling. Is the bad lady gone? Rose whispered. She's gone, Richard promised. Forever. The reveal of Cisneros adds a layer of corporate espionage to the domestic drama, making it a high-stakes thriller. Marcella trying to blame her lover is classic villain behavior. But Richard, he is cool, calm, and collected. The king has returned. If you love this takedown, comment, justice. The police stayed to take statements. But Richard refused to let them question the girls tonight. They are traumatized, Richard told the sergeant. I am taking them to a safe place. You can talk to my lawyer tomorrow. He didn't stay in the mansion. He couldn't. The air felt poisoned. He packed a bag for them. Just the essentials. He found their favorite blankets, the ones Bernard had hidden for them. He found the one-eyed teddy bear. Where are we going, Daddy? Lily asked as he buckled them into the back seat of the Bentley. Miller had already changed the tire. To Aunt Elena's, Richard said. Aunt Elena? Rose gasped. But Marcella said she died. Richard closed his eyes. Another lie. Another cruelty. She is very much alive, Richard said. And she is waiting for us with hot chocolate. As the car pulled away, Richard looked back at the mansion one last time. It stood on the hill, lit up like a Christmas tree. Beautiful and empty. He hated it. He picked up his phone and dialed his real estate agent. It was 4:30 a.m. Hello? The agent answered, groggy. Sell it, Richard said. Mr. Sterling? Sell what? The house. The estate. Everything. I don't care about the price. Just get rid of it. Burn it to the ground for all I care. Just make sure I never have to own it again. He hung up. He reached back and took Lily's hand. She squeezed it. We're going to be okay, Richard whispered. We're going to be okay. Selling the house is the final act of breaking free. Richard is burning the ships. He is choosing his daughters over his legacy. This is the end of the old Richard and the birth of the dad Richard. But the healing journey is just beginning. Queens, New York. 5:15 a.m. The Bentley pulled up to a modest brownstone on a quiet street. It was a world away from the gated isolation of Greenwich. Here, the houses were close together, breathing in sync. Richard helped Lily and Rose out of the car. They were wrapped in cashmere blankets, shivering not from cold, but from shock. Where are we? Rose whispered, clutching her one-eyed bear. It smells like onions. And rain, Lily added. And old wood. This is Aunt Elena's house, Richard said softly. It's safe here. He guided them up the steps. The door flew open before they could knock. Elena stood there. She wasn't wearing the designer clothes Marcella favored. She wore a flannel nightgown and a fuzzy robe. Her hair was in curlers. She looked real? Richard? She gasped, looking at the disheveled billionaire and the two fragile girls. We need a place to stay, Richard said, his voice breaking. Just for tonight. Elena didn't ask questions. She didn't say, I told you so. She dropped to her knees on the porch, ignoring the wet wood, and opened her arms. Come here, Miss Pyritos. My little birds, she sobbed. The twins hesitated. They hadn't been hugged by a woman in 2 years, not a real hug. Marcella's hugs were stiff, performed for cameras. Then Rose took a step. Then Lily. They fell into Elena's arms, burying their faces in her soft robe. She's warm, Rose whispered. Like Mommy. Richard watched them, leaning against the doorframe. He felt like an intruder in this scene of love. He had denied them this comfort for so long. "Come inside," Elena commanded, standing up and ushering them in. "I'm making hot chocolate. Real chocolate. Not that powder stuff." Inside, the house was cluttered and cozy. Rugs overlapped on the floor. Books piled on tables. It was a sensory playground for the blind girls. "Feel the walls," Elena said. "This is plaster. It's bumpy. That means you're in the hallway. This rug is wool. That means living room." Richard sat on a worn armchair in the corner. He watched his daughters explore the room with their hands. They touched the velvet sofa. They touched the ceramic cat statue. They touched the warmth radiating from the radiator. For the first time in 2 years, they weren't navigating a minefield. They were exploring a home. The contrast between the cold mansion and the warm, cluttered home is essential. Elena provides the sensory safety they need. Richard, watching from the corner, shows he still feels guilty. He doesn't feel like he belongs in their happiness yet. If you are rooting for Elena, drop a in the comments. The sun rose over Queens. But there was no rest for Richard. At 9 a.m., Dr. Aris arrived. She was a private pediatrician Richard had hired, a specialist in trauma. He refused to take them to a hospital where the press might find them. Dr. Aris set up a makeshift clinic in Elena's guest room. Richard stood by the door as she examined them. "Weight is in the 10th percentile," Dr. Aris murmured, making notes. "Dehydration. Vitamin D deficiency." She lifted Lily's pajama top. Richard flinched. There were bruises. Old ones, yellow and green, fading on her ribs. And new ones, red and angry, on her shins. "From the cane," Lily whispered. She kicked it. "And here?" Dr. Aris touched a small scar on Rose's arm. "The oven," Rose said matter-of-factly. "I touched the wrong dial." She held my hand there. "To teach me hot from cold." Richard had to leave the room. He walked out onto the back porch. He gripped the railing until his knuckles turned white. He wanted to scream. He wanted to go back to the police station and tear Marcella apart with his bare hands. How had he not seen it? "How?" "Because you were looking at the horizon," Elena said, stepping out behind him. She handed him a mug of coffee. "You were looking at the future, Richard. You forgot to look at the present." "I failed them, Elena. I'm a monster." "No," Elena said firmly. Marcella was the monster. "You were just asleep, but you're awake now. And they need you to stay awake." Richard took the coffee. His hands were shaking. "I will never sleep again." He vowed that the physical evidence of abuse is the hardest part to face. Richard's guilt is overwhelming. Elena's line, "You were looking at the horizon," is a powerful critique of his ambition. He was building a future for them while their present was burning. If you think parents need to be more present, hit like night fell. The girls were tucked into Elena's guest bed. A massive feather mattress that swallowed their small frames. Richard insisted on sleeping on the floor. "I'll be right here," he said, spreading a blanket on the rug. "If you need anything. Anything at all. Even water?" Rose asked. "Especially water," Richard said. "You can have a swimming pool of water if you want." They fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the trauma. But at 2 a.m., the screaming started. It wasn't a normal cry. It was a guttural, terrified shriek. Richard bolted upright. Lily was sitting up in bed, thrashing, her eyes wide open but unseeing. "Don't lock it! Don't lock it!" she screamed, clawing at the air. "I'll be good. I promise." Richard scrambled up. "Lily, it's me. It's Daddy." He tried to hug her, but she fought him. She didn't know where she was. In her mind, she was back in the basement. No. No, the spiders. Richard didn't know what to do. He looked at Rose, who was now awake and crying in the corner. Elena burst into the room. "Move," she said gently to Richard. She sat on the bed. She didn't grab Lily. She just started humming. A low rhythmic melody. The same lullaby Grace used to sing. La Llorona. She tapped a rhythm on the mattress. Thump, thump, thump like a heartbeat. Lily stopped thrashing. She tilted her head. Mommy? It's Tia Elena, she whispered. You are in Queens. You are safe. The door is open. Listen. She pointed to the hallway. The sound of the street outside cars, a siren, life drifted in. No basement, Elena said. Only windows. Lily collapsed into Elena's arms, sobbing. Richard watched from the floor, feeling useless. He realized then that money couldn't fix this. He couldn't write a check to make the nightmares go away. He had to learn the lullabies. This is the reality of PTSD. It doesn't go away just because the bad guy is in jail. Richard realizing his money is useless is a crucial character moment. He has to learn a new currency: comfort. If you want to see Richard learn the lullabies, subscribe now. While the nights were filled with terror, the days were filled with lawyers. Richard met his legal team in a rented office in Manhattan. He refused to go to Sterling Global headquarters. Mr. Stone, his chief counsel, slid a file across the table. Marcella is pleading not guilty, Stone said. She claims you framed her. She claims the videos are deepfakes created by your tech company. She's delusional, Richard said, his voice cold. She's desperate, Stone corrected. And she has leverage. She knows about the Tokyo merger details. She's threatening to leak confidential data if you don't give her a settlement. Richard laughed. It was a dark, dangerous sound. Let her leak it, Richard said. I don't care about the merger. I don't care about the stock price. I care about burying her. But Richard, Stone warned. If the Tokyo deal collapses, you lose 40% of your net worth. Richard stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the city he had spent his life conquering. Mr. Stone, Richard said. I watched my daughter eat a burger off the floor yesterday. Do you think I give a damn about 40%? Burn it. Burn the whole company if you have to. But make sure she never sees the sun again. He turned back to the table. And Cisneros? He's flipping. Stone smiled. He's offering full testimony against Marcella in exchange for a reduced sentence. He has emails, voice notes, everything. Good, Richard said. Accept the deal. Use him to destroy her. Richard is going scorched earth. He is willing to lose his fortune to ensure justice. This is the ultimate redemption for a man who used to prioritize business over family. Burn it. 2 words that show he has changed. Are you Team Richard? Back in Queens, the healing was slow. One afternoon, Richard sat on the porch with Rose. She was the quieter twin, the one who retreated inward. She was holding a braille book, running her fingers over the bumps, but she wasn't reading. She was just touching the texture. Rose? Richard asked softly. She flinched. It's okay, Richard said. I wanted to ask if I could brush your hair. Her hair was matted. Marcella hadn't allowed them to brush it properly. Rose hesitated. Will it hurt? I hope not, Richard said. I bought a special brush. It's soft. Like a bunny. He showed her the brush. She touched the bristles. Okay, she whispered. Richard sat behind her. He took a strand of hair. His hands, used to signing $1 million checks, were trembling. He was terrified of pulling, of hurting her. He brushed, gently, slowly. Stroke. Stroke. Rose tensed up, waiting for the yank, the slap. But it didn't come. Richard hummed. He hummed the only song he could remember, Claire de Lune. Slowly, Rose's shoulders dropped. She leaned back against his knees. Daddy? Yeah, baby. You're doing it wrong, she giggled softly. You missed a spot. Richard smiled. A real smile. Then I guess I'll have to keep going. For 20 minutes they sat there. A billionaire and his daughter, fixing a mess that was years in the making, one tangle at a time. This is intimacy. This is trust being rebuilt. Hairbrushing is such a simple act, but here it represents safety.
Richard is learning to be gentle, to be patient.
If this moment made you smile, leave a for Rose. A week later, Bernard called Richard into the living room. I have a surprise. Sir, Bernard said. He opened the door to the small sunroom at the back of Elena's house. There, squeezed between a pile of boxes and an old exercise bike, was an upright piano.
It wasn't a Steinway.
It was a beat-up Yamaha. I found it at a pawn shop, Bernard said. It needs tuning, but... Lily gasped. She heard the wood creaking. She smelled the old felt. A piano? She whispered. Go ahead, Richard said. It's yours. Lily walked forward, hands outstretched. She touched the keys. Plink. It was out of tune. It sounded like a honking goose, but to Lily it was a symphony. She sat on the bench. Rose sat next to her. They put their hands on the keys. They hadn't played in 2 years. Marcella had forbidden it. They hesitated. It's okay, Richard said from the doorway. Make noise. Make loud noise. Wake up the neighbors. Lily pressed a chord. C major. Rose added a melody. They played. It was messy. It was discordant. They laughed when they hit a wrong note. They banged on the keys. Richard watched them, tears streaming down his face. He realized that the silence in the mansion hadn't just been the absence of sound. It had been the absence of life. Now the noise was back. And it was beautiful. Music is their voice. Marcella took it away, but Richard gave it back. Wake up the neighbors. He is encouraging them to take up space, to be heard. This is the opposite of the be quiet rule. Healing is loud. 2 months passed. It was spring now. Richard bought a new house. Not a mansion. A farmhouse in upstate New York. It had land, trees, and no neighbors for miles. He hired a landscape architect. I don't want it to look good, Richard told the architect. I want it to feel good. He built a sensory garden. Paths made of different materials, gravel, wood chips. Smooth stones, so the girls knew exactly where they were, by the feel of their feet. Fountains that bubbled at different pitches, plants chosen for their texture. Lamb's ear. Soft. Rosemary, rough, lavender, smell. On the day they moved in, Richard led them to the garden. Take off your shoes, he said. Is it dirt? Rose asked, worried. Marcella said dirt is dirty. Dirt is life, Richard said. Take them off. They stepped onto the moss path. It was cool and soft. Oh! Lily squealed. They ran. For the first time in years, they ran without fear of hitting a wall. They ran because the path guided them. They ran because the wind chimes told them where the fence was. Richard stood on the porch, watching them run. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He looked younger, lighter. You did good, Mr. Sterling, Bernard said, standing beside him with a tray of lemonade. We did good, Bernard, Richard corrected.
He built a world for them.
A world where they don't need eyes to see. This is the ultimate act of love, adapting the world to fit your child, not forcing your child to fit the world. If you love this sensory garden idea, hit like. The night before the trial began, a heavy fog rolled off the Hudson River, enveloping Manhattan in a shroud of gray. Richard sat in his temporary penthouse in the city. He hadn't slept in 3 days. He was sitting at the dining table, surrounded by boxes of evidence. Bank statements, emails, the transcripts of the nanny cam videos. He picked up a transcript labeled, Exhibit A, Kitchen Incident. He read the words on the page. Marcella, eat the trash. That's what you are. The words blurred. He took off his reading glasses and rubbed his eyes. He felt old. Not in years, but in spirit. The rage that had fueled him for months had settled into a cold, hard stone in his gut. His phone buzzed. It was Elena. Are you ready? She asked. Her voice was tinny through the speaker, but strong. I don't know, Richard admitted. What if she wins, Elena? What if she charms the jury? She's good at it. She charmed me. You were lonely, Richard. The jury isn't lonely. They are angry. And they will see what we see.
How are the girls? They are sleeping,
Elena said softly. Rose had a bad dream about the basement again, but Bernard made her warm milk. She asked if you were going to fight the dragon tomorrow. The dragon, Richard repeated.
A faint smile touched his lips. Yeah, tell her I'm bringing my sword.
He hung up. He looked out the window at the city lights. Millions of people, millions of stories. But tomorrow, only one story mattered. He went to the closet and pulled out his suit for court.
Not the cream suit.
That was the old Richard. He chose a dark navy suit. Serious. Somber. A suit for a funeral, or a war. Pre-trial anxiety is real.
Richard is doubting himself because he was fooled once.
This vulnerability makes him human. If you are rooting for Richard to slay the dragon tomorrow, type guilty in the comments. The Supreme Court of New York was a cavernous room of mahogany and marble, smelling of old paper and anxiety. The gallery was packed.
Reporters, former employees, curious onlookers.
The blind twins' abuse scandal had dominated the headlines for months. Richard walked in. He didn't look at the cameras.
He didn't look at the crowd.
He walked straight to the plaintiff's table and sat down. Then, the side door opened. Marcella entered. She had been in Rikers Island for 4 months. She was thinner. Her roots had grown out, leaving a stark line of dark brown against the artificial blonde.
She wore a modest gray cardigan and a pencil skirt, an outfit chosen to make her look like a librarian, not a socialite. She caught Richard's eye. She didn't look ashamed. She looked furious, like a cornered cat waiting to scratch.
All rise, the bailiff announced. Judge Harrison. A woman with a face carved from granite took the bench.
Mr. Prosecutor,
your opening statement. The prosecutor, a young, sharp man named David Rossi, stood up. He didn't use notes. He walked to the jury box and looked them in the eye. Ladies and gentlemen, Rossi began.
We often think of a home as a sanctuary, a place where we are safe. But for Lily and Rose Sterling, their home was a torture chamber.
And the torturer wasn't a stranger.
It was the woman who promised to be their mother.
He pointed at Marcella. We will show you that this woman didn't just neglect these children. She systematically targeted them because they were disabled. Because they were vulnerable. And because they were in the way of her true goal, Mr. Sterling's fortune. Marcella's lawyer, a slick, high-priced defense attorney named Mr. Blackwood, stood up next. Objection to the theatrics, Blackwood said smoothly. My client is a victim of a smear campaign. A husband who was absent for years, who neglected his own children, and now needs a scapegoat to save his reputation. Marcella Sterling did the best she could with 2 difficult, special needs children while her husband jetted around the world. Richard gripped the table. Absent. The word stung because it was true. He had been absent. But he was here now. The defense strategy is brutal. Blame the victim. Blame the father. It's a classic move. Marcella is trying to paint herself as the martyr. Does this make your blood boil? Let me know in the comments. The trial dragged on for days. First came the financial evidence. The forensic accountant testified about the shell companies, the transfers to the Cayman Islands, the emails to Cisneros. Then came Bernard. The old butler took the stand. He was wearing his best Sunday suit. Mr. Bernard, the prosecutor asked, why did you leave the Sterling employment? I was forced out, Bernard said, his voice trembling slightly. Mrs. Sterling planted a bottle of wine in my bag. She told me if I didn't leave, she would call the police. And why do you think she wanted you gone? Because I saw, Bernard said. He looked at Marcella. I saw her take away their food. I saw her lock the pantry. I saw the fear in Miss Rosa's eyes when she heard Mrs. Sterling's footsteps. Objection! Blackwood shouted. Speculation. Sustained, the judge said. Stick to the facts. Mr. Bernard. The fact is, Bernard said, his voice rising. She is evil. The jury murmured. But the real blow came on day 4. The prosecution calls Richard Sterling to the stand. Richard walked up. He placed his hand on the Bible. He swore to tell the truth.
Mr. Sterling, Rossi asked, when did you install the cameras?
November 12th. And why?
Because I had a bad feeling.
A gut instinct. And what did you see on the night of November 15th?
Richard took a deep breath. He looked at the jury. I saw my wife.
I saw the defendant
take a burger out of a trash bag and throw it at my blind daughter and tell her to eat it off the floor.
Let's play the tape, Rossi said. The lights in the courtroom dimmed. The large screens flickered to life.
The gray night vision footage appeared. The sound of Marcella's voice filled the room. Eat the trash. That's what you are. The slap. The kick. The silence in the courtroom was absolute.
It was a physical weight.
No one breathed. Richard watched the screen. He forced himself to watch it.
He needed to remember every second of it so he would never let it happen again. When the video ended, Marcella wasn't looking at the jury.
She was looking at the table.
For the first time, she looked small.
Mr. Sterling,
Rossi asked softly.
What did you do after seeing this?
I came home, Richard whispered.
And I took my daughters back.
The video evidence is undeniable. Seeing it in a courtroom, surrounded by strangers, makes it even more horrific. It strips away Marcella's socialite mask and reveals the abuser underneath. This is the turning point of the trial. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. It was a record time. When they returned, the foreman, a middle-aged schoolteacher, stood up. She refused to look at Marcella.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
Judge Harrison asked. We have, Your Honor. In the matter of the People versus Marcella Sterling, on the charge of child endangerment in the first degree, how do you find?
Guilty.
Richard let out a breath.
On the charge of grand larceny?
Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud?
Guilty.
It was a clean sweep. Guilty on all counts. The judge nodded.
Marcella Sterling, you are hereby remanded to custody.
Sentencing will be set for nitrogen monoxide. Marcella stood up.
She slammed her hands on the table.
The shackles rattled loudly.
This is a mistake,
she screamed, her face turning red.
He set me up.
He's the monster.
He neglected them for years.
I was the one who fed them. I was the one who clothed them. Sit down, Mrs. Sterling, the judge ordered. I won't sit down.
Marcella pointed a shaking finger at Richard.
You think you've won? You think you're a hero? You're just a bank account. Those girls will never love you. They are broken because of you. Bailiff, restrain the defendant, the judge said calmly. 2 officers grabbed Marcella. She fought them. She kicked and screamed, spitting insults. You'll rot alone, Richard. You'll rot in that empty house. They dragged her out the side door. Her screams echoed in the hallway long after the door closed. Richard sat still. He didn't react. He didn't shout back. He just watched her go.
He felt a hand on his shoulder.
It was Rossi, the prosecutor. It's over, Richard. Richard stood up. He adjusted his jacket. No, Richard said. The trial is over. The work is just beginning. Marcella's breakdown shows her true colors one last time. She isn't sorry. She is just angry she got caught. Her words, "You're just a bank account," are meant to hurt, but they don't land anymore. Richard knows who he is now. He is a father. If you are satisfied with this verdict, hit like. Before going home to the girls, Richard had one stop to make. He drove to the cemetery in Greenwich. It was spring now. The snow was gone. The grass was green. He walked to Grace's grave. It was clean. Bernard had been visiting. Richard knelt down. He placed a bouquet of lily and roses on the stone. I did it, Grace, he whispered to the wind. I stopped her. The wind rustled the trees. It sounded like a sigh. I know I was lost, Richard admitted, tracing her name on the granite. I know I let you down.
I let them down. But I promise you, I'm back. I'm really back. He sat there for an hour just talking.
He told her about the new house. He told her about the piano. He told her about Elena's empanadas. When he stood up, he felt lighter. The ghost that had haunted him, the ghost of his own guilt, wasn't gone. But it was quieter.
Goodbye, my love, Richard said. He walked back to the car. He didn't look back. He had living daughters who needed him. Visiting the grave is a necessary closure. Richard needed to apologize to Grace before he could fully move on. It's a quiet spiritual moment amidst the chaos. Healing involves making peace with the dead, as well as the living. Time is the only true healer. 1 year passed. Then 2. Then 5. The farmhouse in upstate New York, the orchard, became a sanctuary. Richard didn't go back to being a CEO. He became a consultant. Working from home so he could be there when the school bus dropped the girls off. There were hard days. Days when Lily refused to eat, because the texture reminded her of that night. Richard would sit with her for hours, cutting apples into stars, making food fun again. Days when Rose heard a loud noise and hid under the bed. Richard would crawl under with her and read Harry Potter until she fell asleep. But there were good days too. The day Lily learned to ride a bike. Richard ran beside her, holding the handlebars, shouting directions. Left! Left, now straight. You're flying, Lil. I'm flying, she screamed. Her face turned up to the sun. The day Rose sang in the school choir. She had a solo. She stood on stage, holding her cane, and opened her mouth. A voice pure and clear filled the auditorium. Richard cried so hard Elena had to pass him a tissue. And through it all, the sensory garden grew. The lavender bushes became massive. The wind chimes rusted and were replaced by new ones. The house filled with memories. Not memories of fear, but of burnt pasta, of piano duets, of muddy footprints, of laughter. We need to see the passage of time. Healing isn't linear. It has ups and downs. Showing Richard crawling under the bed to read Harry Potter is a specific detail that shows his dedication. He isn't just providing. He is participating. 10 years later, Richard Sterling was gray now. His hair was silver, his face lined with the map of his life. He stood in front of a modern glass building in Manhattan. It wasn't a corporate office. It was a school. The Grace Sterling Center for the Blind. He had poured his entire fortune into it. It was a state-of-the-art facility designed entirely for the visually impaired. Textured walls, auditory navigation systems, music rooms, sensory gardens. Mr. Sterling? A young reporter approached him. Why did you build this? Richard looked at the building. He saw students walking and tapping their canes, chatting, laughing. They looked safe. They looked happy. I built it, Richard said, because every child deserves to see the world, even if they don't use their eyes. And every child deserves to be seen. And your daughters? The reporter asked. Are they involved? Richard smiled. Go inside. You'll hear them. Richard's legacy shifted from real estate to humanity. He used his trauma to build something beautiful. This is the pay it forward moment. He didn't just save his own kids. He created a safe haven for others. Inside the center, the auditorium was packed. It was the opening gala. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. 2 women walked onto the stage, Lily and Rose Sterling. They were 17 now. Lily wore a gown of shimmering gold. She walked to the grand Steinway piano with confidence, her hand trailing lightly along the edge. Rose wore a gown of silver. She stood at the microphone stand. They were beautiful. Not just physically, but radiating a strength that filled the room. Good evening, Rose said. Her voice was steady. We are the Sterling sisters. This song, Lily added from the piano bench, is for the man who taught us that the dark isn't scary. It's just a place where the stars shine brighter. Lily began to play. It was an original composition. A complex, weaving melody that sounded like rain, then like a storm, then like a sunrise. Rose began to sing. I waited in the shadows long, for a voice to sing my song. The door was locked, the key was lost, I paid the heavy, silent cost. But then the walls came tumbling down, and love became my only crown. Richard sat in the front row. Elena was on his right, Bernard on his left. He listened to the lyrics. He remembered the terrified little girls in the kitchen. He remembered the useless burdens, and he looked at them now. Powerful, talented, free. Tears streamed down his face. He didn't wipe them away. He let them fall, a testament to the journey. When the song ended, the audience stood up. A standing ovation that shook the floorboards. Rose looked out into the black void of the audience. She couldn't see them, but she could feel the love washing over her like a warm ocean. "Dad?" She called out. Richard stood up. "I'm here. Come up here," Lily said. Richard walked up the stairs to the stage. He took his daughter's hands. They bowed together, a family. Broken, glued back together, and stronger at the broken places. This is the payoff. The useless girls are now stars. They have reclaimed their narrative. Inviting Richard on stage acknowledges his role not just as a savior, but as a partner in their life. The lyrics of the song summarize the entire story. The final scene takes us back to the farmhouse. The orchard. It was a Sunday evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky in strokes of violent orange and soft purple. Richard sat on the porch swing. He was rocking gently. Creak, creak. Lily came out and sat beside him. She handed him a mug of tea. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. "I was just thinking," Richard said, taking the tea. "About that night." "Which night?" "The night I came back. The blizzard." Lily was silent for a moment. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I don't think about that night much anymore," she said. "I think about the morning after. The empanadas." Richard laughed. "Elena's empanadas saved us." "No," Lily said. She reached out and found his hand. She squeezed it. "You saved us, Dad. You came back." "I will always come back," Richard promised. "I know." They sat there in silence, watching the sun disappear behind the apple trees. The wind chimes in the garden began to sing, 1,000 tiny voices in the breeze. To anyone driving by, it was just an old man and his daughter on a porch. But to them, it was a victory. They had survived the winter. And now it was finally, truly summer, the end. And that is the story of Richard, Lily, and Rose. From the darkest dungeon of a mansion to the bright stage of a concert hall. It is a reminder that no matter how deep the betrayal, love stubborn, fierce, showing up love can fix almost anything. Thank you for listening to this story. If you believe in the power of second chances, if you believe that every child deserves a protector, please subscribe to our channel. Share this video with someone you love.